Hi, my name is Neha,
And I'm Becca.
and we're the co-founders of a support group called Teen Talk.
So Teen Talk is a group that supports, educates, and connects teens whose parents have been diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, so my background is that my father was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease about 5 years ago, and my sister and I at the time didn't really have a lot of support or know anyone that was in a sort of similar position as we were. So, yeah, I guess when Beck and I connected, we wanted to sort of create this group in that space to provide support to other teens in the same position.
So today we wanted to talk about the impact of a Parkinson's diagnosis on the family and especially teens from the perspective of our guest, Todd. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I would. My name's Todd. I have young onset Parkinson's disease, and anything else you want to know, just ask me questions. I'll tell you. But I'm happy to be here and happy to support your mission.
So you worked in, or you studied child development, right?
I have a bachelor's and master's both in child development, human development, and with an emphasis on how trauma, loss, grief, bereavement, which this is also a version of that. Those are what my degrees are in. And then I have thousands of hours of volunteer work in a variety of different areas with children, predominantly trauma-related things. And professionally, I worked in pediatric oncology at UCLA Mattel Children's Hospital and a couple of other hospitals, kids with cancer, and run sport groups and did all sorts of things. So, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. How did you become interested in like learning about child development and going further with that?
It started basically for me in childhood. I came out of an environment that no child should have to survive or endure. It was pretty intense and, a heavy impact on me growing up. And as I got older and decided that my life mission was to do acts of service and give back to other kids who were struggling in a variety of ways. And through there, I ran into a foundation called the Make-A-Wish Foundation, where I was a volunteer wish granter for 20 years and a bunch of other things for them. Absolutely fell in love with their whole mission and ended up volunteering at UCLA and then went back to school. Because right out of high school, I was playing ice hockey. I didn't go to college. I was trying to be a professional ice hockey player. So I went back to school as an adult and got my degrees in record time and went through an internship and sat for a 6 hour exam that 73% of people failed and aced that and then got certified as a certified child life specialist and got hired by the place I started at UCLA, which was amazing, full circle moment. So during that time period is when I was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's. And so I took all that experience and knowledge and transferred it over into this world to help kids like yourself and even young adults as well on how to kind of deal with their parents having this disease. So that's kind of it in a nutshell right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's sort of that definitely relates to our meetings because in our meetings we have a whole caregiving chapter. We've had two meetings on the caregiving chapter and shifting family roles. Like for example, the teens having to shift to a more parental role in the house with gradual loss of some abilities that the parent might have, and how that teen has the ability to sort of assume that role. So we wanted to ask you a little bit about how you think that affects a teen or a child in this position, maybe taking on a new, more mature role or different role in the house compared to other teens who don't have to do that.
Yeah, I think it goes without saying that whether you're in that age range right now or you're older and you can look back and remember that time period in life, it's a volatile time period. There's a lot of changes going on just in under quote unquote normal circumstances. You're literally still physically maturing. You are mentally, emotionally, psychologically, cognitively still maturing and growing. You're going through this huge transition of, in your guys' case, graduating high school, moving on to college, trying to figure out your career, what your life looks like, who are your peers, who are your friends, what is your whole vision for what you want to do. And then suddenly there's a wrench thrown into everything where you have a parent that is struggling and whether the roles of caregiver are pushed on you or it's just something you decide you want to take on in your own. Either way, it's that added burden and element of challenge that can be extremely overwhelming. Like, what do I do? Do I do enough? If I don't do anything, do I feel guilty about it? I mean, there's just a range of emotions that happen there. So, one of the things that I've worked with kids in your position, teenage and younger kids as well, is just kind of helping them define what their family dynamic is, because that's the other huge element that plays into this is what is your family dynamic? What is your relationship with your parents, or in this case, the parent who has Parkinson's? Is it good? Is it a little bit strained, which is not unusual when you're a teenager. You want to be independent and, do your thing. So there can be conflict there, obviously, and it's not out of hatred, in most places. It's just growth. But you have to kind of look at your family dynamic. What is your family like? Do you guys communicate? Do you not communicate? How do you communicate? Um, and then, what are the expectations in your family under normal circumstances, and how does that change when something like this comes into play?
Yeah, definitely. I can totally relate to all of that. I think especially like my dad specifically is not always I guess wanting to accept help and that kind of thing. So whether or not I'm stepping into that role, it can be difficult to um handle my relationship with him with like, oh, like whether or not he feels like he needs help, like do I still offer and will he be accepting even if he does need it? And also like I think my relationship with my mom is different based on like how we're handling those responsibilities together, especially with my sister being out of the house and everything in college and all that. But yeah, no, definitely it's a lot of emotions to handle like that new dynamic that I think is not there's not a lot of people around my age that are experiencing that at the same time as me, that it's not easier to relate to other kids and be like, oh yeah, like, the other day I was helping my dad with the bills because of memory issues and things like that that we had to like go back and see like, okay, what happened here? And I have to be the one helping my parents with that. Like that sort of thing is not a common experience around a lot of teens. So I think it's difficult to navigate all of that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that also sort of goes into what we talk about family relationships and how like kind of assuming that role or man and how that affects managing a relationship with that parent with Parkinson's when it feels like you're sort of I don't want to say like actually I'll say like becoming more responsible for someone who's supposed to be responsible for you or shifting that balance a little bit and how have you seen that like affects relationships?
Yes. So for, excuse me, kind of think of it from even from your own perspective that you're struggling with something and somebody offers to help you and you're like, oh no, I got this. Don't, I'm fine. I've got it. So you've got a parent who I don't know what your dad's particular symptoms are and what he really struggles with. You did mention, cognitive issues. Parents are supposed to take care of children. That's just kind of how a lot of cultures work. They're the providers, they're the protectors. This is what they do. Um, and then suddenly they're in a position where like they are thinking, oh, I need help with this, but I don't want to ask for help. I'm going to look weak. There's a whole element of pride that happens there for all of us in situations like that. I know a tremendous amount of people who are very kind, caring, compassionate, empathetic humans who freely give all that to others, but when it's time to receive it, the wall goes up. Like, no, I'm not, I can do this. Um, that happens a lot in this environment, in your situation. You've experienced a part of it with the story you just told. Is there an easy answer for this? The only real easy answer, and again, it goes back to family dynamics, is that a family dynamic where you can just sit down with your dad and just go, hey, I know sometimes you're struggling. I know sometimes that when I try to help, it seems like you're like, no, I can do this. He's probably trying to maintain as much independence as possible. We all are as we struggle with this disease. But if you are able to have the conversation, go, what can I do to help you out? And have those conversations about expectations. And because there are a lot of kids that I met, you guys, in this journey where the the expectations have just been put on the child with no conversations whatsoever. Like, you need to step up, you need to take the trash out, you need to do the dishes, you need to do this, you need to do that. There's no conversation. It's just you're being told what to do, and that's not a healthy way to go about this. So in a perfect world, you sit down, you have the conversation, go, hey, Dad, man, what can I do? Like, where can I help you? And I know sometimes you seem resistant. I understand that, but how do I help you? What's the best way that we can do this? It has to be, in order for any of this to work, it has to be a team effort. And that includes bringing mom into the conversation, and maybe Neha having a conversation with your sister and what her experience has been like and her point of view, and using that as well, to kind of open up that dialogue. Um, that part's critical because if we all just sit back and kind of assume, well, he's acting this way because we don't really have that conversation, that's where the miscommunication happens. That's where things get more stressful. So just being able to talk about it. The part that I really though think is the hardest, um, well, there's a number of elements. I think that one of the biggest challenges for us as people with Parkinson's, again, is there's a massive fear that's always floating in the back of our brains, like, how quickly is my version of this going to progress? And we see other people who are, like, way worse off than us. And is that going to be me tomorrow or whatever? So you have that added element of stress, which is why I really am an advocate for having those conversations right away and just talking about it and getting it out on the table. And, Dad, what are your fears? Because here are my fears. Here's what I feel from my perspective. Now you can have that conversation and just go, I just want to help, but I don't want to make you uncomfortable as if you can't do things. I'm just trying to help because, I love and care about you, that kind of conversation. So,
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you really hit the nail on the head with the whole like it's not that I don't think you can do everything, but sometimes like it's okay if you need help and I'm here to provide that if you need it. Yeah, no, definitely. I think something that we've also talked about in meetings like on the other side of like within the family communication and everything is specifically for teens to have like support outside of the family with people that like it's a balance between finding people that can relate to and understand what you're going through without being the same people in that situation. So you're saying like, like talking to my sister, we've talked a lot about like, what's going on in our house and how can we like, process that and I guess, have that sort of more open communication with our parents. But on the flip side, like how like to find support outside, which is, what we're trying to do with Teen Talk. But yeah, I think especially with this sort of with it being teens, like I was saying earlier, that there's not a lot of people with shared experience or at least conversation about that shared experience if there is. And so or even like when there is like when I know about someone else who is in a similar situation or things, it's hard to feel comfortable reaching out and having like starting those conversations. So I was wondering like I guess what do you think, what advice would you give to teens like in this position about finding support and protecting like their mental health through very importantly, you're saying like developmental period for us at this time?
yeah, that's a difficult one because, first and foremost, if you look at the world of Parkinson's as a whole, the young onset community, we're a very small percentage of people who are diagnosed with Parkinson's. So right there, we're already limited. Then on top of that, you have a very small percentage of people with young onset who happen to have children. So now you have a smaller pool of people resource-wise to reach out to find those connections. So what you guys are doing and being proactive about this and really working to build what you're building is a much needed, it's a much needed support system that does not really exist in our world, which is why I'm 1,000% behind you guys. So, in terms of how do you find these other humans, who do you talk to, how do you initiate that conversation? First and foremost, there has to be a resource, which is what you've created. So that's one of the first steps. But there are a lot of kids who don't have the resource who don't know about this yet. So the question becomes, when this resource is not available, who do you talk to? And who do you find that can relate to, having a parent who's got some kind of health issue that has changed everything during this point in your life and your development? That's a challenge because there aren't a lot of resources there. Are you going to have conversations with somebody whose parent has been diagnosed with cancer or something along those lines so that at least you have some kind of connection and something in common in terms of having a parent with a health issue? It's a possibility, but it's also an extremely different situation too. Um, I wish I had a magic answer for you guys on this. I don't really have one. The best thing you can just do is find somebody in your life who you trust. It could be a teacher, it could be, a friend, it could be, some other relative in your family that you feel close and that you feel that you can trust and have a conversation with. Because support groups like this, they're not available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for you to reach out to somebody. You've got to find somebody somewhere that you can have that conversation with. Even if they have, in your case, Neha, if they're not a person who has a parent with Parkinson's, sometimes we just need an ear. We just need somebody to listen. We don't need answers and solutions. We just need to feel like we're seen and we're heard and that we matter. Um, and that's a good way to kind of release that stress and that anxiety. And again, you've got so much on your plate, graduating high school, moving off to college, that's a huge thing to deal with. And so having an option like this it's brilliant and it's amazing, but it's not common. And so there is no easy answer. So that's why I think the most critical thing we can do is create conversation. And again, it goes back to family dynamics. I've met a lot of kids over my journey where they cannot have that conversation. Like it's taboo in their household. We don't talk about this. And what do those kids do? And how do we help those kids, be able to reach out and deal with everything that's kind of building up inside you? There has to be a release at some point.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that pressure cooker that at the end, that pressure's built up, and now you got to release that steam or that thing's going to blow, right?
Yeah.
That's how it is here because you've got all these emotions and feelings, and you've got this parent, and you're feeling helpless because you can't save them, but then you're frustrated because they won't let you help them, and then they get frustrated because you're trying to help them, and then they're struggling, and blah, blah, blah. You've got to release that pressure somehow. Um, so this kind of stuff, find a friend, family member, anybody you can just talk to, even if they don't have the same situation. It's still a great way to kind of release that pressure and to kind of just breathe again.
Yeah,
You know,
that's sort of also how we started this. Neha and I were just sitting in Starbucks, talking. I think something came up about studying the brain in college, all these exciting things. And I've been sort of studying it a little bit and I've been interested in it. And I told her, like, oh, like, I've been studying Parkinson's and things like that. And then that's how so that was the first time I found out that her dad actually had Parkinson's. And I think that conversation, we were both, it was very casual and I understood, like, I didn't understand personally, but I was able to say, like, oh, I understand this. And like, yeah, you can tell me anything because I'm open to listening to you about this and I'm a friend. And I support you through all this. And she was, and I know you were like, oh, like I've never told anyone this before, like I can't tell people this, but I think, yeah, definitely, that sort of opening up helped us realize that we could do this for other people. We can support these teens, just like Neha, who might be in the same situation. And even me, I don't have a parent who's diagnosed with Parkinson's, but I think it's good for people to have an ear to someone who does understand sort of what they're going through, but also can, maybe learn from them and from their experiences. And it's just, I think it's nice to have just
Yeah.
a friend or an ear, something like that, so
Yeah,
we can
I
create a
mean,
space that's comfortable.
obviously, like, I told Becca, like, this is not something that I really like told a lot of people. It's hard to like find people that do like understand or at least have the background. A lot of people don't even know what Parkinson's is or like or have thought about what it may be like to have a chronic disease in the family and that kind of thing. Like that sort of concept is not like a lot of people just don't know about it at our age, which why should you have to, you know? So it was really nice to talk to Becca about all of this. And I think going through this sort of journey together about, creating this group and, whether or not like the interaction and we get with other teens and all that, like even just going through the work of like, okay, let's put this into words about how this like really affects like the family dynamics, as you were saying, and all of that, and going through it together, I think has made like at least for me, and I know that the teens that we have talked to have expressed the same of like being able to talk to people who really understand that and can put it into words and have that space really to share those things without having to explain all of the background of like, oh, what even is Parkinson's and how can you explain the multitude of symptoms and all of that and changes that come with that diagnosis. So yeah, that's been really, really important to me. And I totally like agree with everything you're saying about that space and the open communication, whether or not it's with someone who has or is in the exact same position or not.
Yeah, and like you said, like not a lot of people really know what it is at this point, but it's so our group isn't just about supporting the teens, it's also about we want to create a little bit of awareness within our community so that they know like, hey, this exists in your community. People are going through this, and I think it's just good that people understand these sort of heavy topics and not just be completely oblivious to them and be like, oh, I don't know what that is. I'm not going to learn about that. It doesn't affect me whatever. Like nobody I know is affected by it. It's not in my community, but we want them to understand that, yeah, it is. And that goes with so many other things as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you guys are the perfect example of what I was talking about in that how you decided for whatever reason to kind of open up to Rebecca, right? And then now look where you are
Mhm.
because you took that chance with somebody who does not have a parent with Parkinson's, who doesn't have experience in this. She's got an interest, obviously, in I think you got lucky, because she's got an interest in brain science and how our brains work. And, that played in your favor for sure. The bottom line is you took a risk and you talked to somebody about something that is deeply personal and is challenging. And a lot of kids don't want to talk about that. There is a sense of, and it's not a criticism, I want to make this crystal clear, of kids who are embarrassed because their parent is now different. Kids who might feel some level of guilt, even though they didn't do anything wrong for this to happen. So there's that, and then they don't want to talk about it. And the fact that you did, I think, is just a testament to what can happen when you take that risk and open up. Is everybody going to be as responsive and understanding as a Rebecca? No, they're not. They're going to go, yeah, like Rebecca said, I don't know anything about this and I don't care. It doesn't affect me. So, you're going to have those moments and that's okay. That's just human nature. But you took the risk, you reached out, and then look what happened. You gave yourself an avenue that for you blossomed into something really beautiful. Um, for other kids, it is kind of figuring out how to take that jump, that leap of faith, and find somebody where you can say, "Hey, man, my mom, she's got Parkinson's," and they're like, "What's that?" And it's like, "Oh, she's got this tremor and she's having problems doing stuff, and I'm just trying to figure out how to help her and trying to find somebody who's got some level of compassion and empathy to go, hey, I can't relate to any of this, but I'm here, man. I'll help you out. I'll do it. If you want to talk, I'll talk. I'm here." So, but the only way you find that is you have to take that risk. You have to take that leap of faith. And
Yeah.
it's scary, but you got to do it.
Yeah, and I know you told us like you went around the country
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about this and speaking on this very topic. Are there any instances where it was sort of tough or you had to find other ways, or how do you just like get through to teens who, may not be open or aren't accepting and like
Yeah, like you
maybe
were
if they have a
saying.
new diagnosis in the family and they just don't know.
Yeah, like you're saying, not everyone's open to even starting that conversation.
Yeah. So, in my journeys and travels of doing all this, there's been two specific things that happen. There have been meetings. I don't say support groups, they're just more meetings because obviously I'm just traveling around the country doing this, where we will have kids and parents in the same room and try to open dialogue and have conversations. And at the end, there will be parents who will come up in tears going, I never knew my kid felt that way. where a kid just for some reason decides this is the moment I'm going to open up and open the floodgates and here we go. And it gets highly, highly emotional. And then there's other kids who will just shut down. They're like, nope, I'm not talking about this. I don't want to talk about this until we can get in an environment where we do remove the parent and give them a little more freedom and they feel a little bit safer to express themselves. And, you'll have a lot of kids that will sit there and I can see in their face they want to say something, but they're just not ready until maybe towards the end of the meeting when they've heard all these other kids kind of open up and share their experiences, their concerns, their fears, their challenges, their successes. And then that one person who's just been like, nope, I'm not going to say anything, suddenly opens up because now they feel safe. Now they feel, okay, these people understand, they get it. Um, One of the things I'm going to say, and this is going to sound like a horrendously bad bragging situation, is I have this really weird ability to get through to kids who don't open up to other people. When I worked in pediatric oncology, which is the perfect example, when you're in oncology, you have kids in the hospital who could be in the hospital for years at a time. That's what people don't understand. Like a kid gets cancer, you think, oh, they go into the hospital for a little bit, they get treatments, they come home. No, kids stay in the hospital for years at a time. So you develop long-term relationships and daily intimate connections with these children and their families. And there will be a point where a child developmentally will regress because of the trauma, because of the stress of the environment that they're in, all of it. And you see it at a lesser extent to kids whose parents have Parkinson's. They'll regress developmentally. And when they do that, they tend to shut down and then they put up the walls. And even mom and dad can't get through to them in the hospital environment. Child psychology can't get through to them. Social work can't get through to them. The doctors and nurses can't, they just shut down. And for some reason, I have this is the brag part, that I have this weird ability that I can go into a room and I kick everybody else out. Parents, you're out. Doctors, you're out. Nurses, out. Everybody out. And it's just me and a kid, and we'll just sit there and talk. Children are highly, highly, highly intuitive beings, highly intuitive. Cognitively, they may not be able to verbally express their emotions and their feelings quite yet, but if you learn to read them, you can see what's really going on. But they're highly intuitive and they know when somebody's BSing them. Let's just be honest. So if I go in there and I'm very upfront and I'm real and I'm honest and I'm authentic, they will know that. And then they open up to me. In 20, 30 minutes, I walk out and go, okay, the kid's ready to go do that test that they were refusing to do. I just have this weird innate ability to kind of get through to kids. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. It just is something I think I was gifted with, and I take it really seriously. But I know that it's a rare thing. So the question becomes, when you have a kid that's shut down, how do you get through to them? Um, is first and foremost is just to listen. They don't need to be talked to. They don't need to be told what to do. They're not looking for that. It went back to what I said earlier. Everybody just wants to be seen and heard and know that you matter. And in this situation, struggling with a parent that is struggling and you not knowing what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to do this? How is this affecting my life? Am I going to have to take on more responsibilities of the dreams I had? Are those dreams crushed now? Do I have to not go to college because I got to stay home and help my family? All those things are going on with them. A lot of times they just need to be heard. It's not about giving them solutions. They will find their way as long as you allow them to release that pressure we talked about earlier and just to be heard and know that they matter. And once they get that part, then the rest of it kind of organically and naturally falls into place.
Yeah, I think that really all just ties it together, coming back to, just letting everything out, being heard, things like that, like feeling supported and that like someone understands you no matter, I guess, who they are, what role they have. I think that's a really special skill to have. I think everybody should really learn from that and just find ways to, listen and make the person feel like comfortable enough to tell their story and, like you said, make them feel like they matter, no matter what challenges they have going on or what maybe new scary things that they have to endure.
Yeah. Um,
I mean, that's all I have to add to
that,
that. That was
yeah,
great.
that's all I have to add. Um, I I mean, I don't have any more questions for you. Is there anything else that you wanted to share or that you think that anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Um, not really. I think that, again, it really kind of boils down to your life is different now. Everything about your family, and this, I hope this doesn't sound like doom and gloom, but it is the reality. In therapy, they call this radical acceptance. Um, Things have changed in your life. Things are not going to be the same. The life you knew before this diagnosis of your family member, that part of your life is over and it's done and it's different now. Now you have a new life and things are going to be different. And if you're like, oh, I wish for the old days when, dad could do this or that, that's fine. You want to, have fond remembrances of that, but those moments are gone. So now it is a matter of this radical acceptance of accepting, okay, here's this situation. I hate everything about it. It makes me angry and I just want to punch, things and let all that out. But I have to accept this is my new reality. So how do I find a positive way to go forward? Where's the light in the middle of all this? Things can get a little dark and you got to figure out where's the light. The light's always there. You just have to look for it. So how do we do that? And you do that by meeting at a Starbucks with a friend and talking about something that maybe you have been kind of holding close to your chest and not wanting to share. And then something beautiful came out of it, You do that by going to Teen Talk and going to a support group and hanging out and meeting other kids who are like, oh man, I can relate to what that person's saying because I felt that same way. You do it by just finding ways to release. Maybe it's journaling for you. Maybe it's sitting in the car and cranking up your favorite tune and just like screaming to let out those frustrations. And it's not just a kid thing. Adults, we do that too, just so you know. Um, Punch your pillow or, have a good cry or whatever you got to do, you do just to release. And so that now you can breathe and you go, okay, now what's the next step? What do I do here now? Um, it sounds super, super, super cheesy, and I'm almost embarrassed to say it out loud, but there was a children's TV show, Mr. Rogers, and he always just said, look for the helpers. And he's not wrong because they're everywhere. You just got to look. They're right there. And you guys are now the helpers. How cool is that?
And we love doing it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Been
It's
great.
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like people who aren't really affected by these kinds of diagnoses, or like people who don't have these things going on in their family, they're not looking at someone and going like, "Ooh, like they've got family issues right now. Like I see darkness in them." You don't see that, so you just have to find ways to reach out. I guess people aren't just gonna come up to you and be like, "What's going on with your family?" Like something is different. I mean, it could some people could show it, some people couldn't. So you just got to be there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful. Well
I,
done.
that's a great
Yeah.
way to tie things
And I
up.
think we can incorporate all of this into Teen Talk, and this will definitely help.
Yeah,
Hopefully people will listen to this and it'll help them as well, help them open up more, hopefully, validate their roles in their families.
start those conversations and
Yeah,
everything.
feeling seen.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
hopefully we can have you in one of our meetings. I think that would be great.
Anytime.
All right.
Absolutely anytime. Like I said, I'm part of I'm part of Team Teen Talk. I'm supporting
Yeah,
you
Teen
guys.
Talk.
Doing magical stuff. So I'm down
thank
100%.
Yeah, well,
This
thank you
has
so
been
much
great.
for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, we're not as experienced with you as you with all these talking to hundreds and thousands of people, but we really appreciate your time and coming on to talk to us about everything.
Yeah, absolutely, you guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's all we have today.